I thought the hardest part was over when I clicked that final payment button. 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of double shifts, and skipped vacations all leading to this one moment. My condo in Seattle was finally mine, truly mine. No more mortgage hanging over my head. I was 32, and for the first time since I was 20, I felt like I could breathe. My younger brother Daniel was happy for me. But Patricia, his wife, had this look in her eyes during our celebration dinner. She kept walking around my place, touching things, measuring spaces with her gaze. I should have known something was coming. I had no idea that paying off my condo would be the trigger for the biggest family explosion I had ever witnessed. Before we dive into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you are curious about how someone can claim your property as theirs and what I did to stop it cold, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what Patricia said next would change everything. And what I whispered back, well, you will want to hear how this plays out. Let me take you back to the celebration dinner. It was a Friday evening, and I had invited Daniel and Patricia over to my place. My condo was not fancy, just a modest 2-bedroom in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, but it was my sanctuary. Every corner represented something I had earned through hard work. The view from my balcony overlooked the city lights, and on clear days, you could see Mount Rainier in the distance. I had spent a decade making this place home, painting the walls myself, fixing things when they broke, learning to be handy because I could not afford to hire people for every little problem. Daniel showed up with a 6-pack of local craft beer, genuinely excited for me. He understood what this meant, because he knew where we had come from. Patricia came in behind him wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and immediately started walking around. Not just looking, but really examining everything. She opened closet doors, peeked into my bedroom, ran her fingers along the kitchen countertops. I remember thinking it was odd, but I brushed it off as curiosity. We sat down to eat. I had ordered Thai food from our favorite spot downtown. Daniel kept toasting to my success, talking about how proud he was. Patricia seemed distracted, barely touching her food. She kept glancing around, and I could see her mind working, calculating something. But I was too happy to worry about it. I was finally free from debt. Let me tell you how I got here. When I was 20 years old, our parents died in a car accident. It was sudden, brutal, and it shattered our world. Daniel was only 17, still in high school. The insurance settlement was not huge, but it was enough to give us each a foundation. I became Daniel's legal guardian overnight. I took my portion of the money and used it as a down payment on this condo. It was small, needed work, but it was in a good neighborhood with potential. More importantly, it meant Daniel and I had stability during the worst time of our lives. I worked as a junior software developer back then, making barely enough to cover the mortgage and our living expenses. I took online courses at night, pushed myself to learn new programming languages, worked overtime whenever it was available. Slowly, I climbed the ladder, junior developer to mid-level to senior. By the time I was 28, I was leading projects, making decent money, but every extra dollar went to that mortgage. I wanted it paid off. I wanted to honor what our parents had left us by building something solid. Daniel lived with me through college. I helped him with tuition, made sure he could focus on his studies without worrying about money. He graduated with a marketing degree and landed a job at a decent firm downtown. In his senior year, he met Patricia at some campus event. She was charming, beautiful, and very interested in Daniel. They got married 3 years ago in a ceremony that cost more than I thought was reasonable, but Daniel was happy, so I supported it. I always kept a polite distance from Patricia. Something about her made me uncomfortable, though I could never quite put my finger on it. She was sweet to Daniel, at least in public, but there were these moments. Little comments about money, about what people should share, about family obligations. She came from a wealthy family herself, but apparently there had been some falling out, some drama that cut her off from their money. Daniel never talked about it much, and I never pushed. During that dinner, Patricia finally broke her silence with a question that should have been innocent but felt loaded. She asked how much the condo had gone up in value since I bought it. I told her property values in Seattle had surged over the past decade. What I paid $280,000 for was now worth close to $600,000. She nodded slowly, that calculating look intensifying. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. She mentioned that she and Daniel had been talking about moving out of their apartment. Rent was insane in Seattle, she said, and they were throwing money away. I sympathized because it was true. I offered to help them look for affordable options, maybe even connect them with my real estate agent friend. Patricia smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. She started asking more questions. How much had my mortgage payment been? When exactly did I buy the place? How much of the down payment came from the insurance money? Daniel seemed oblivious, just happy to be celebrating. But I felt this creeping unease. Why did she need to know all these details? I answered politely, trying to keep the mood light. But inside, alarm bells were starting to ring. Patricia's questions were too specific, too pointed. She was building a case for something, gathering information, and I had no idea what was coming. That night ended with hugs and congratulations, but after they left, I stood in my living room feeling like something had shifted. I just could not figure out what. 2 weeks later, Patricia called me. Her voice was chipper, almost too friendly. She asked if I could meet her at a coffee shop in Fremont, said it was about family matters, and that Daniel would join us. I agreed, thinking maybe they wanted advice on buying their own place or needed help with something. I arrived at the coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon. I had taken an early lunch break from work. Patricia was already there, sitting at a corner table with a folder in front of her. She was dressed like she was heading to a business meeting, which struck me as odd. I looked around for Daniel, but she said he was running late and would join us soon. We ordered coffee, made small talk about the weather, and then Patricia opened that folder. My blood went cold when I saw what was inside. Property records, printed screenshots of real estate websites showing my condo's value, spreadsheets with calculations I did not understand yet. She had been doing homework. Patricia looked at me with this serious expression and said she had been doing research. Then she dropped the bomb. She told me that my condo should be considered family property. I sat there, coffee cup halfway to my mouth, certain I had misheard her. I asked her to repeat herself. She did more confidently this time. Her argument went like this. The insurance money our parents left was family money. I had used it for the down payment. Therefore, the condo was built on a family foundation and should belong to the family. Since Daniel was my brother, he had an equal claim to it. She spoke like this was obvious, like she was explaining basic math to a child. I tried to stay calm. I explained that yes, I used the insurance money for the down payment, but I had paid the mortgage entirely on my own for 10 years. Every single payment came from my paychecks, my overtime, my sacrifices. Daniel had been in college then, starting his career. He had never contributed a penny to the mortgage, which was fine because he was my brother, and I wanted to help him succeed. Patricia waved this away like it was irrelevant. She insisted that family takes care of family. She brought up how Daniel had supported me emotionally through tough times. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Daniel was 17 when our parents died. I was the one who held everything together, who made sure he got to school, who helped with homework, who worked myself to exhaustion so he could have a normal life. But in Patricia's version of history, somehow Daniel had been my pillar of strength. She got more aggressive as I pushed back. She pulled out printed pages showing that I could easily rent a studio apartment for less than I was currently spending on utilities and HOA fees. She had researched my options for me. How thoughtful. Then came the real kicker. She demanded that I either let them move into the condo or sell it and split the proceeds with Daniel. I refused, keeping my voice level despite the rage building inside me. I told her we could discuss this with Daniel present, because clearly there had been some miscommunication. That is when Patricia dropped another bomb. She smirked and said Daniel agreed with her. They had already discussed it, and he knew what was fair. My heart sank. I asked if Daniel knew about this meeting, if he knew she was here presenting this insane proposal. She dodged the question, just kept repeating that Daniel knew what was fair and that family came first. I stood up, told her this conversation was over, and walked out. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands shaking before I could drive. I called Daniel immediately. He answered, sounding confused. I asked him directly if he knew Patricia was meeting with me today. He did not. I asked if he thought he had a claim to my condo. There was a long pause. Then he said Patricia had mentioned something about helping me with expenses, maybe contributing to bills, but nothing about moving in or claiming ownership. His voice was uncertain, like he was trying to piece together what Patricia had actually told him versus what she had told me. I felt a tiny bit of relief. At least Daniel had not fully signed on to this madness yet. But the fact that Patricia was manipulating both of us, playing us against each other, made me sick. I told Daniel we needed to talk, all three of us, and get this sorted out. He agreed, sounding worried. 3 days later, we met at Daniel and Patricia's apartment. I walked in hoping for a reasonable conversation. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Patricia had prepared a presentation. I am not kidding. She had a PowerPoint loaded on their TV. Slides with charts showing property appreciation, cost of living comparisons, even rental listings for studio apartments I could supposedly move into. She went through her presentation like she was pitching to investors. The condo was a family asset purchased with family money. They needed it more than I did, because they were planning to start a family soon. I was single, had no dependents, and could easily downgrade to a smaller place. She even showed photos of studio apartments, talking about how cozy and efficient they were, perfect for a bachelor. Daniel sat on the couch, looking miserable. He would not meet my eyes. Every time I tried to interject, Patricia talked over me. She was in full control of this meeting, and she knew it. She pulled out the emotional manipulation next. Did I not want my brother to have a good life? Did I not want to be an uncle someday? Did I not want my future nieces and nephews to grow up in a nice home? I turned to Daniel, ignoring Patricia completely. I asked him point blank if this was what he wanted. He hesitated, squirmed, and finally said that it would help them out, and after all I had used Mom and Dad's money for the down payment. His words felt like a punch to the gut. My own brother, the kid I had raised, was turning on me. Patricia sensed she was winning. She got bolder, more demanding. Then she announced that they had already given notice on their apartment. They were moving into my condo in 1 month. I had 4 weeks to find another place. She even offered to let me stay temporarily rent-free for 3 months, as a gesture of goodwill. After that, I could pay $800 a month if I wanted to keep the second bedroom. She called this fair, generous even. I sat there in stunned silence. Patricia took my silence as acceptance and started planning out loud. Which room would be the nursery? Where would their furniture go? Maybe they would repaint the living room. My color choices were too dark. She talked about my home like it was already hers, like I was just a tenant who had overstayed his welcome. I felt paralyzed. Part of me wanted to explode, to yell, to throw her out. But another part of me felt this crushing weight of betrayal. Daniel just sat there letting this happen. My brother, who I had sacrificed everything for, was letting his wife steal my home out from under me. I left that apartment in a daze. I drove around Seattle aimlessly, my mind spinning. Eventually I ended up at Cary Park, staring out at the city lights and the dark shape of Puget Sound beyond. I sat on a bench as the evening grew colder, trying to process what had just happened. 10 years. 10 years of my life poured into that condo. I thought about all the things I had given up. Relationships that fizzled because I was always working. Trips I never took because every dollar went to the mortgage. My entire 20s spent building something stable, something mine. And now Patricia wanted to take it, wrap it in the language of family obligation, and make me the bad guy for resisting. I thought about just giving in. Was it worth fighting? They were family, after all. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just find a new place and let them have it. But then I thought about my parents. They had left money to both of us, yes, but they left it to us individually, trusting us to use it wisely for our own futures. I had honored that by building equity, by creating stability. Daniel had used his portion for college expenses and starting his adult life. That was his choice, and it was fine. The more I sat there, the clearer things became. This was not about family. This was about Patricia seeing an opportunity and taking it. She had failed to secure her own family's money. Daniel and she had apparently been rejected for a mortgage, and now they saw my paid-off condo as an easy target. She was counting on family guilt to manipulate me into giving up what I had worked for. I decided right then that I would not let it happen. But I needed to be smart about this. Emotional arguments would not work. Patricia had already twisted the family narrative to suit her needs. I needed leverage, facts, legal standing. I needed a plan. The next morning I called in sick to work. I needed time to think and research. I started by calling my friend Marcus from college. He had become a real estate attorney, and we still got together for basketball occasionally. I explained the situation, and he immediately told me to come to his office. Marcus reviewed all my documents. The deed was solely in my name. The mortgage had been solely in my name. Daniel had never been on any paperwork, had never made any payments, had no legal claim whatsoever. Marcus was blunt. He told me that what Patricia was attempting was essentially theft through intimidation. He asked if I wanted to pursue harassment charges or get a restraining order. I told him I had a different idea. I wanted to make it impossible for Patricia to ever touch my property, and I wanted to do it in a way that would shut down this entire conversation permanently. Marcus smiled and said he could help with that. Over the next 2 days, I did more digging. I looked into public records and discovered that Patricia and Daniel had been house hunting for months. They had applied for a mortgage 3 months earlier and been rejected. I found the reason through some careful searching. Patricia had significant credit card debt she had hidden from Daniel, and their combined income was not enough to qualify for anything in Seattle's market. This explained everything. The timing, the desperation, the audacity of her claim. They were stuck, and Patricia had decided my condo was the solution. She probably figured I was too nice, too concerned about family harmony to fight back hard. I also found that Patricia had been posting on social media about moving into a new family home in Capitol Hill. She was already telling her friends it was happening, showing them pictures of my neighborhood, talking about decorating plans. She had committed publicly to this narrative, which meant backing down would humiliate her. Good. I wanted her humiliated. Marcus helped me set up an irrevocable trust with my condo as the primary asset. The trust was structured so that only I had any control or benefit from the property. Even if someone somehow convinced a court I owed them something which Marcus assured me was impossible, they could not touch the property itself. It was protected. The paperwork was rushed through, and within 4 days my condo was legally shielded. I also had Marcus draft a formal cease and desist letter outlining Patricia's harassment and attempted property theft. We did not send it yet. That was my ace in the hole, my nuclear option if things escalated further. Then I set the trap. I called Patricia and told her I wanted to discuss things calmly, just the two of us, without the emotion of our last meeting. I suggested she come to the condo on Saturday afternoon. I could tell she thought I was caving, that I was ready to negotiate terms of my surrender. She agreed immediately, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I changed my locks just in case Patricia had somehow gotten a key. I set up my phone to record audio, which is legal in Washington state with one-party consent. I reviewed everything with Marcus one more time. I was ready. Saturday arrived. I was calm, centered, almost looking forward to this. Around 2 in the afternoon, Patricia pulled up in her SUV. I watched from my window as she got out. She had moving boxes in the back of her vehicle. She had actually brought boxes, assuming this meeting would end with her moving in. She knocked and I opened the door with a smile. She walked in already talking about timelines and logistics. She had a tape measure in her hand and immediately started measuring the walls in my living room. She talked about repainting, about how my taste was too much of a bachelor pad for a family home. She opened my kitchen cabinets, talking about which dishes she would keep and which she would donate. I just followed her around, phone in my pocket, recording everything, saying nothing. My silence made her bolder. She went into the second bedroom and announced this would be perfect for a nursery. She could already see the crib here, the changing table there. Then she turned to me and laid out the new terms. Daniel and I had decided, she said, that I could stay in the second bedroom for 3 months, rent-free. That was generous, she emphasized. After 3 months, I would pay $800 a month to continue living there, which was below market rate. She was doing me a favor. See, I should be grateful. Then came the line. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "This is a family asset now. We are moving in. Find another place." I simply smiled. I had been waiting for this moment, rehearsing it in my head. Patricia mistook my smile for submission. Her face lit up with victory. She started talking faster, making more plans already, moving on to discussing move-in dates. I let her finish her sentence. Then I leaned in close and whispered calmly, quietly, so she had to strain to hear me. I told her I had already transferred the deed to an irrevocable trust. She would never touch this property. I had also contacted an attorney about her harassment and attempted property theft, and Daniel I was giving him a choice: stand up to her or lose his brother forever. Then I walked to my front door and opened it. I stood there holding the door, waiting. Patricia just stood in the middle of my living room, frozen. I could see her brain working, trying to process what I had just said. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, realization, panic. Then reality hit her like a truck. She screamed, "No way. That is not fair." I actually chuckled. I could not help it. The irony was too perfect. I looked at her and said, "Oh, fairness was not your concern before, was it?" Patricia tried to argue. She sputtered about family, about obligations, about how I was being selfish and cruel. I pulled out my phone and played back some of her own words from the recording. Her voice filled my condo, talking about how she was taking my home, how I needed to find another place, how this was decided. I then calmly explained that she had no legal case. I showed her the legal opinion Marcus had prepared, right there on my phone. I told her I had evidence of her harassment, her attempted theft, her manipulation. I could pursue legal action if she continued. I suggested she leave immediately or I would call the police. Patricia's face went from red to white. She tried different tactics. First, anger, threatening to sue me to turn Daniel against me completely. When that did not work, she switched to tears. Suddenly, she was sorry. She had just been trying to help family. I was misunderstanding her intentions. She claimed it was all a miscommunication. I was unmoved. I told her she had shown me exactly who she was, and I believed her. Every word, every action, every manipulation had revealed her true character. There was nothing left to discuss. She grabbed her tape measure, her purse, and stormed out. Those moving boxes stayed in her car. I watched her drive away, tires squealing slightly as she took the corner too fast. Then I closed my door, locked it, and stood in my condo, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That evening, my phone rang. It was Daniel. Patricia had called him immediately, crying, telling him I had threatened her and kicked her out. She had painted herself as the victim, claimed I had been cruel and heartless. But Daniel's voice was different this time. He sounded tired, drained. He asked me to tell him what really happened. So I did. I explained everything calmly, from the first coffee shop meeting, to the presentation at their apartment, to the final confrontation. Then I sent him the audio recording. I told him to listen to it, to hear his wife's actual words, her actual plans. There was a long silence after I finished. I could hear Daniel breathing on the other end of the line, processing everything. Finally, he spoke. He apologized. He said he was sorry that he did not know it had gone this far, that Patricia had been feeding him a different version of events. He admitted he had been weak, wanting to please her, not standing up when he should have. He had let her twist things, let her manipulate both of us. I told him the truth. He was my brother, and I loved him. Nothing would change that. But I would not be disrespected in my own home. I had worked too hard, sacrifice too much to let anyone take what I had built. I set clear boundaries. Patricia was not welcome in my home. Daniel could visit alone any time, but she was done. He needed to make a choice about his marriage, about who he wanted to be. Daniel said he understood. He said he needed time to think, to figure things out. We agreed to give each other space, let things cool down. Before we hung up, he said something that stuck with me. He said he was proud of me for standing up, that maybe he needed to learn how to do the same. The weeks that followed were quiet. I focused on work, threw myself into a new project at my company. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning, something I had been meaning to do for years, but never had time for. I met new people who knew nothing about my family drama, who just wanted to enjoy the mountains and the fresh air. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my decade of hustle. We grabbed beers, watched games, did normal things that I had put on hold while chasing that mortgage payoff. I started dating someone, a teacher named Emma. I met through the hiking group. We took things slow, just coffee dates and trail walks, but it felt good to open that part of my life again. My condo felt like mine again. The violation I had felt, that sense of my space being claimed by someone else, faded. I repainted the living room not because Patricia had criticized my color choice, but because I wanted a change. I bought new furniture, updated some fixtures, made the place feel fresh. Daniel reached out about once a month. We met for coffee, neutral territory, and talked. He told me that he and Patricia were in marriage counseling. Things were rocky. She had not taken the rejection well, had doubled down on her victim narrative to friends and family. Most people saw through it, which only made her angrier. Daniel was starting to see patterns he had missed before, ways she manipulated situations and people. I did not push him to make any decisions. That was his journey, his marriage, his choice. I just listened and reminded him that I was here, that I was his brother, no matter what. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood on my balcony one evening, watching the sunset paint Mount Rainier pink and gold. I thought about everything that had happened, everything I had learned. The biggest lesson was this: not everyone who shares your blood respects your sacrifice. Some people will see your success as an opportunity for themselves, will twist family bonds into weapons of guilt and obligation. I learned the importance of boundaries. Saying no is not cruel. Protecting what you have built is not selfish. Sometimes love means standing firm even when it hurts, even when it costs you relationships. I learned to document everything to protect myself legally, because good intentions are not enough when someone is determined to take from you. I thought about my parents often during those months. I wondered what they would think of how things had turned out. I believed they would be proud. I had taken what they left me and built something solid. When that was threatened, I had protected it, not with anger or revenge, but with smart preparation and firm boundaries. The condo was not just property to me. It represented my dignity, my decade of work, my independence. It was proof that sacrifice pays off, that discipline creates security, that you can build something meaningful through steady effort. Letting Patricia take it would have been letting her erase all of that, would have told me that my work meant nothing compared to someone else's demands. I did not regret my actions, not for a second. Were family relationships complicated now? Yes. Was there awkwardness at the few family gatherings we still had? Absolutely. But I was at peace with myself, and that mattered more. I realized something important about family. Real family lifts you up. Real family celebrates your success without trying to claim it. Real family respects boundaries and does not weaponize guilt. Blood relation does not automatically make someone a positive force in your life. You get to choose who has access to you, to your space, to your peace of mind. Some people will never forgive you for not letting them use you. Patricia was one of those people. She still told anyone who would listen that I was selfish, that I had abandoned family, but her opinion stopped mattering to me the moment she tried to steal my home. Daniel was slowly finding his way, figuring out what kind of life he wanted. I hoped he would choose himself, choose his own path, but I could not do that work for him. As for me, I was good. Better than good, actually. My condo still stood solid, and paid off, and entirely mine. And so did I. I had learned to stand up for myself, to value what I had built, to refuse to be manipulated by claims of obligation. Those were lessons worth more than any property. I ended that evening thinking about fairness. Patricia had screamed that what I did was not fair. But fairness is not about equal outcomes. It is about equal opportunity, and respecting what people build with their opportunities. I built something with what our parents left me. Daniel built something different with his portion. That was fair. Patricia wanting to take what I built because her own plans failed. That was the opposite of fair. Standing on that balcony looking at my city, I felt grateful. Grateful for the struggle that taught me strength. Grateful for the confrontation that taught me boundaries. Grateful for the peace that came from knowing my worth and protecting it. My home was mine. My life was mine. And I had learned I was strong enough to keep it that way. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone in your life try to take credit for your hard work, or claim they deserved what you built? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to hear how others have dealt with family members or friends who crossed boundaries. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that standing up for yourself is not selfish, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel, because I share more stories about real-life challenges and how people overcome them. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to protect what they have worked for. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of this community. Remember, you are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to protect your peace. And you never owe anyone an explanation for refusing to be used. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next one.